just announced proposals to reform the Supreme Court. This happening literally a minute ago. These would include no immunity for crimes a former president committed in office, term limits for Supreme Court justices, and a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. Joe Biden also releasing a new op-ed this morning saying in part, quote, "This nation was founded on a simple yet profound principle. No one is above the law."
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Speechless. I'm your host, Phares, 23-year-old conservative activist. Make sure to not miss a minute of any of the news I cover, that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think, share it with your friends, all that fun stuff. But let's get right on into it. President Biden has announced this week that he has some major Supreme Court reforms that he wants to get through. And so I want to break them down, talk about them, and also talk about how Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, responded, and how even Biden might have threatened him. Let's get right on into it. As we noticed from that clip right at the beginning, we see that Joe Biden has announced some different reforms here, including no immunity for crimes a former president committed in office, which obviously goes directly against what the Supreme Court decided just a few weeks ago, really. Also adding term limits for Supreme Court justices, and a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. Now, all of this is not actually about strengthening the highest court in the land or anything like that. No, it's actually about political motive. Let's be clear. This is about political motive, and there's multiple ways that I know this. Well, the first is obviously the one area that the Democrats have not been able to control over the last few years. The saving grace for any conservative in America is the fact that we still had the court, significantly due to the appointments made under the Trump administration between 2016 and 2020. Now, another big way that I know this is that court packing has been discussed. And despite the fact that pretty much every legal scholar on both sides of the aisle agree that court packing is not only constitutionally shaky, but also just a terrible idea, people still have it in their repertoire, Democrats especially, because they're unhappy with the politics of it. A perfect example of that is Kamala Harris. Let's take a look and a listen right here to this clip of her talking about the idea of discussing it.
So I will say that I am interested in having that conversation, and I'm open to this conversation about extending the number of people on the United States Supreme Court, about increasing the number of people in the United States Supreme Court.
Now, like I said, anybody with even half a brain knows that's a terrible idea. Why? Why is it a terrible idea? Because as soon as somebody else gets into power that you don't like, they're just going to keep adding and adding justices so they can always get their way. It over-politicizes the court. And I know people claim that we already have a politicized court, blah, blah, blah. We can have that argument. But if you want to politicize it even more, add people just for the heck of it so that you can just appoint people that you will always agree with you. And it's never actually about getting any level of justice. If you want to destroy democracy, if you want to destroy justice, if you want to destroy America, attack the court. Attack the court by doing things like that. And so this is really just kind of testing the waters, dipping Joe Biden's toe into expanding the court for their own political purposes and not in any means an idea of justice. Now, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, ripped Biden's proposal to reform the Supreme Court as, quote, dead on arrival. Speaker Johnson excoriated the proposed changes to the Supreme Court that Joe Biden unveiled on Monday and declared they would be dead on arrival in the House. The proposal, which comes at a time when the high court has a 6-3 conservative majority, seeks 18-year term limits and an enforceable ethics code for justices. It also pushes for an amendment to crack down on presidential immunity after a ruling in July that favored former President Donald Trump. I would also argue that would also favor Joe Biden if we had a completely infallible and purely justice-based justice system, but in fact, we have a justice system that rewards liberal privilege. But I digress. Biden's proposal to radically overhaul the United States Supreme Court would tilt the balance of power and erode not only the rule of law, but the American people's faith in our justice system, Johnson said in a post on X. This proposal is the logical conclusion to the Biden-Harris administration and congressional Democrats' ongoing efforts to delegitimize the Supreme Court. Johnson also warned that Democrats' calls to, quote, quote, expand and pack the Supreme Court will soon resume, which is exactly what I just said. Biden, 81, who recently dropped out of the 2024 race, unveiled his proposal for reforming the high court with an op-ed in the Washington Post. Obviously, that's what the Fox News clip that I played at the beginning mentioned. This cited gripes with some of its rulings in recent years, including the abortion one, Dobbs v. The women's health, presidential immunity, as well as the transparency issues related to the justices themselves. Vice President Kamala Harris, whom Biden has endorsed as his successor, supports the plan and called on lawmakers to pass the reform. So does the Democrat chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. However, Johnson signaled that the proposed changes would not even get a vote. It is telling that Democrats want to change the system that has guided our nation since its founding simply because they disagree with the court's recent decisions. The dangerous gambit of the Biden-Harris administration is dead on arrival in the House, although Biden's proposal faces long odds in making it through Congress at the moment. That may change if Republicans get blown out in the 2024 election. Still, even the Democrat-led Senate failed to overcome GOP opposition to pass a Supreme Court ethics bill earlier this year. Nobody wants to touch the Supreme Court. No Republican does, because as of right now, it's Republicans for the taking. And honestly, this is not just about, there's a few things. First is when it comes to the Washington Post op-ed that Biden's intern published, it'll say that it's by Biden, but it's not. That Biden's intern published, you know that this is just obviously terrible legislation when nowhere in it does it really make a solid legal argument for why any of these should be accepted and passed. No, it's all about all these decisions that I have gripes with, all of these issues that I have with the current Supreme Court. And so if you're wanting to fundamentally change the longstanding institution that is the Supreme Court, and you want to fundamentally change it for decades, years, if not forever, you should probably have some level of precedent that would show that it should be changed other than wah, I don't like where they went or what the decisions they've made. Along with that, I think there's also is some foresight from the Democrats, and the real idea here, and I can't necessarily blame them. Not only are they losing the court right now, they will lose the court come the next 4 years if they lose the presidency, and it's seeming more and more like they will. If you look at the current ages of Supreme Court justices, we have 2, maybe 3 seats that could be up for grabs come through the next election cycle. It's likely Sonia Sotomayor, who is 70 years old, will probably end up staying on the court as long as she possibly can, assuming Trump gets elected. But Samuel Alito, who is 74, Clarence Thomas, who is 76, they could both likely be out, and they would probably take the opportunity to be if Trump is reelected. Those would be 2 more seats that Trump would be able to add younger justices to, just like he did with Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. And so he would be able to push longer, basically take over the next generation of the Supreme Court. And that is what the Democrats are really worried about. And if anything were to happen, God forbid, to Sonia Sotomayor, as much as I disagree with her, God forbid anything happened to her, that would be another person that Trump could have the opportunity to replace. But I think the thing that is most disturbing about all of this, not even just the fact that Biden is doing this and there's no legal precedent really to do this. It's honestly just bad policy. It really is. It's just bad policy. There are Democrats that I guarantee you would agree with me on that. Nonpartisanly. I think a big issue with this is, so Speaker Johnson described this as dead on arrival. Take a look and a listen at how Biden responded when questioned about that outside of Air Force One, right here.
Speaker Johnson said it's dead on arrival. And he is? How are you going to get this vote? How are you?
Maybe he is dead on arrival. That's what he is. He is dead on arrival. Wow. That's a real one. What does that even really mean? That's very cryptic, but I can tell you, to say somebody is dead on arrival, no matter the context, is something worth questioning. And honestly, especially with the assassination attempt against the former president, that's seeming more and more, at least, of negligence and purposeful negligence from higher level authorities. this seems very classless. Maybe it's just feeble, dumb old Joe. Or is it something more targeted? Who knows? Really hope it's not. But that is what is going on with the Supreme Court. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I'm just a law student. I don't really know anything about the law. Let me know in the comments, though. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you learned something, and let me know what you learned in the comments. Like this video, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, ring that notification bell, hit it to all. Comment, let me know what you think, and share this with your friends, especially if you think they could get something out of it. God bless you. God bless America. And until next time, you've been watching Speechless.